the technology and natural gas to those around the globe, India and China, and help them learn from us on what we've done to achieve good outcomes. We've led with action, not words. Paris at its core was a bunch of words committed to very, very minimal environmental benefits and cost this country a substantial amount of money and put us in an economic disadvantage. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does the president believe that, or does the administration believe that any additional deal on carbon emissions, whether it's Paris or a subsequent deal, needs to
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question. Can you,
does the administration believe that any deal, whether it's a revised Paris agreement or another carbon emissions deal, needs congressional approval, either as a treaty or some other form?
Well, I think it's clear with respect to the Paris agreement that there are concerns by the administration. The president expressed this constitutionally in his speech yesterday. I have similar concerns that it should have been submitted to the U.S. Senate for ratification. I think it depends on the nature of the deal, what you actually negotiate. If we're talking about exporting innovation and technology to the rest of the globe, I would say not. I would say that that's not something that needs to be submitted to the U.S. Senate. I would say, however, that if you're setting targets, if you're setting emission targets that are enforceable domestically through regulation or statute, then very much so. The voice of American citizens across the country needs to be heard through the ratification process. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Obviously, a lot of people from the White House are not willing to answer this question of what the president's view is on climate change. So let's talk about your personal views. In March, you said there's tremendous disagreement about the degree of human impact, and you would not agree that it's a primary contributor to global warming. Would you agree that human activity contributes at all to global warming?
I don't know if you guys caught my confirmation process or not, but it's a very intense process, by the way. But that confirmation process, I indicated that in fact global warming is occurring, that human activity contributes to it in some manner. Measuring with precision, from my perspective, the degree of human contribution is very challenging, but it still begs the question, what do we do about it? Does it pose an existential threat, as some say? You know, people have called me a climate skeptic or a climate denier. I don't know what it means to deny the climate. I would say that there are climate exaggerators. In fact, many of you, I don't know if you saw this article or not, but The Climate of Complete Certainty by Bret Stephens that was in the New York Times talked about, and I'll just read a quote because I think it's a very important quote from this article. Anyone who's read the 2014 report of the IPCC knows that while modest 0.85 degrees Celsius warming of the Earth has occurred since 1880, much else that passes as accepted fact is really a matter of probabilities. That's especially true of the sophisticated but fallible models and simulations by which scientists attempt to peer into the climate future. To say this isn't to deny science isn't to acknowledge it honestly. And I think that, look, the debate, what the American people deserve, is a debate, objective, transparent discussion about this issue. And what Paris represents is a international agreement that put this country at a disadvantage with very little benefit environmentally across the globe.
If we deserve a debate, Mr.
Pruitt, may I ask a follow-up question on that, sir? Why then is the Arctic ice shelf melting? Why are the sea levels rising? Why are the hottest temperatures in the last decade essentially the hottest temperatures that we've seen on record?
We've actually been in a hiatus since the late 1990s.
But sir, there's when NASA says that 95% of the experts in this area around the world believe that the Earth is warming, and you are up there throwing out information that says, well, maybe this is being exaggerated and so forth, and you're talking about climate exaggerators. It just seems to a lot of people around the world that you and the president are just denying the reality. And the reality of the situation is that climate change is happening, and it is a significant threat to the planet.
Let me say this, and I've said it in the confirmation process, and I said it yesterday.
About the Arctic ice and the sea levels.
We have done a tremendous amount as a country to achieve reductions in CO2. And we have done that through technology and innovation. We will continue to do that. We will continue to stay engaged. We are a part, as you know, of the UNFCCC, and that process encourages voices by subnational groups and by countries across the globe, and we are going to stay engaged. and try to work through agreements and achieve outcomes that put America's interest first. This is not a message to anyone in the world that America is should be apologetic of its CO2 position. We are actually making tremendous advances. We're just not going to agree to frameworks and agreements that put us at an economic disadvantage and hurt citizens across this country. Yes, sir.
Though that you're putting your head in the sand, though, Mr. Pruitt. They were a little worried that you're putting your head in the sand.
Well, there's no evidence of that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Your fellow Sooner Senator Inhofe said that while he has full confidence in the president in this, he is very nervous about lower-level career government employees in the EPA and the State Department in actually executing what's needed to exit the Paris Climate Accord. As the administrator of EPA, what do you say to your own senator?
What's important to know is that the president said unequivocally yesterday that the targets set in Paris, the 26 to 28% targets, are not enforceable and are not going to be complied with. The Green Climate Fund, where the United States committed $3 billion of initial funding, is not going to continue. That is unequivocally the case, and that's going to be immediate. Now, there are discussions that are ongoing with the Justice Department on the steps that we'll be taking to execute the withdrawal and the exit. That's something that's going to be happening over the next several weeks. But as far as the targets are concerned, as far as the Green Climate Fund, that is immediate, and it's something that's clear. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. European leaders have made it very clear.
I'm sorry?
European leaders have made it very clear the deal can't be renegotiated. So how does the president renegotiate a deal when the other parties aren't willing to come to the table?
Well, as he indicated, whether it's part of the Paris framework or a new deal, it's either approach.
But a new deal with whom if they're not going to sit down at the table with them?
Well, that's up to them, right? I mean, what America, the United States has a seat at the table. After all, we're the United States, and we are leading with respect to CO2 reduction. We have made tremendous progress. If nations around the globe want to seek to learn from us on what we're doing to reduce our CO2 footprint, we're going to share that with them. And that's something that should occur and will occur in the future. And we will reach out and reciprocate with nations who seek to achieve that.
And just a quick follow-up. You're the EPA administrator. Shouldn't you be able to tell the American people whether or not the president still believes that climate change is a hoax? Where does he stand?
As I indicated several times through the process, there's enough to deal with respect to the Paris Agreement and making an informed decision about this important issue. That's what our focus has been over the last several weeks. I've answered the question a couple times. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This gentleman right here. Yes, this gentleman right here. This gentleman right here. Yes.
Thank you. Isn't it of concern that the United States has broken a promise to 190 countries, and the president did not address that particular point? And second, you've several times raised that the lowering of CO2 levels. Isn't the reason for lower CO2 levels because of blocking the smokestack spews that now are not allowed, the kind of regulations that the administration is now opposing?
As I indicated, largely we have reduced our CO2 footprint through innovation and technology, not the least of which is hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. Now, the first part of your question, I forget?
Isn't it of concern that we broke a promise to 190 countries, and how does that help our credibility?
Well, truly, this gentleman's question back here, if it was a promise that was enforceable and was going to obligate this country, then it should have been ratified as a treaty, right? The exposure here to us domestically was 26 to 28% targets that were part of an international agreement. And there are provisions in the Clean Air Act that actually allow for lawsuits to be filed domestically to compel regulation to meet those kinds of percentages. This was as much about constitutional and legal concerns as anything else. And the president dealt decisively with that. But again, the important thing here is it put us in economic disadvantage. The world applauded. The world applauded when we joined Paris. And you know why? I think they applauded because they knew it was going to put this country at an economic disadvantage. And the reason European leaders, going back to the question earlier, that I think they want us to stay in is because they know it will continue to shackle our economy, though we are leading the world with respect to our CO2 reduction. That's all I've got. I've got to head to the airport.